The House of Commons is back in session after a long break, much longer than anything the private market received. Let's hear what the government officials had to say.
After 8 years of this prime minister, he's not worth the cost. Common sense conservatives are working to fix the budget, stop crime, and build homes, but the prime minister not only wants to impose a new 17 cents a litre tax on gas with the support of the NDP and the Bloc, he now wants to impose a decree to close the forestry sector in Quebec. Why does the prime minister want to step on Quebec's jurisdiction to kill jobs in the forestry sector?
Well, with regards to the carbon tax, it's fitting that it increases on April Fools because it is a joke. It's absolutely absurd that we're hit with a tax increase, a carbon tax increase yet again to 17 cents a litre. And if we thought that was bad, by 2030, it's going to be 40 cents per litre. Just the carbon tax on a litre of gasoline, let alone all of the other taxes that are imposed upon Canadians.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, since 2013, Quebec has put in place its own process and for putting a price on carbon. The province is not under the federal regime. The Conservative leader continues to show to what extent he doesn't understand Quebecers by promising to demolish a system that Quebec decided to put in place itself over 10 years ago. It's the Conservative leader who does not respect provincial jurisdiction. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
So before Poilievre answers, if there's one person or one party who shouldn't be commenting on trespassing on provincial jurisdiction, it's the Liberals. The Liberals repeatedly exercise power outside of their appointed domain. And it's only increasing. It's not as though they're pulling back their power. It's not as though they're making government smaller. Quite the opposite. They are actively involving themselves with municipalities, which is not their purpose. They are actively involving themselves in every single aspect of life. It's wrong.
Apparently, there was an interpretation error. The question was about the forestry sector, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister wants to close with a decree which violates Quebec's jurisdiction. Meanwhile, common sense Conservatives want to defend workers in the forestry sector. Meanwhile, in the Journal de Montréal, we read that these people are hungry. People have had to, the police have had to intervene twice in distributing food baskets. So why is the Prime Minister, with his tax and inflationary deficits, continuing to make people hungry? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are the ones who want to reduce all of the social supports that the federal government now offers to Quebecers. The only thing that the Conservatives understand how to do is cut, cut, cut. They want to cut support for those less fortunate, but we will be there and we will not let the Conservatives cut this necessary aid.
So notice the moral absurdity that Freeland here takes. She acts as though it's moral to have a group of people dependent on the federal government for aid. It's not. I'm not saying it's the people's fault for doing so. I have no doubt they do indeed, or many of them do indeed need support from someone, anyone, because the cost of living is so egregious in this country. Who I am blaming is Freeland and the Liberals. The idea that it's moral for them to increase their size by increasing the amount of socialism in the nation is totally absurd, and it's wrong. Of course, we want to try and remove as many dependent programs as possible, not because we want to hurt people, but precisely the opposite, because we want to help them. It does not help a man to be totally dependent on government welfare, because it means government becomes his mother. It means he's not able to act as an independent individual and make independent decisions. He feels himself forced to vote a specific way, for example, versus one that he would rather vote because he's afraid of losing money, losing his ability to live. it grants an extraordinary amount of control to this cabinet and government, which is exactly what we don't want.
Leader of the opposition.
While common sense conservatives are fighting to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, this prime minister is promising a cruel April Fool's Day joke, a 23% carbon tax hike on food, gas, and groceries. This at a time when the prime minister has forced 50 families at CFB at Gagetown, military families, to go to food banks. 2 million Canadians every month going to those same food banks. 8,000 as part of a Facebook group where they share tips on eating out of dumpsters. Will the Prime Minister gain some compassion and some common sense and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to supporting the least vulnerable in our country. This is the party that wants to cut the Canada Child Benefit. This is the party that wants to cut support to our seniors. This is the party that wants to cut early learning and childcare, which supports so many families. They're opposed to dental care. They're opposed to pharmacare, Mr. Speaker.
So, not an answer, which is unsurprising. Let's recap for a moment for Freeland what a tax is. We have a good. That good has a price on it, which tells us how much currency we have to exchange for that good. It tells us how valuable it is in terms of a specific currency. But then government says, when you purchase that good, you also have to pay some money to us. Why? We don't know. You just do. That's a tax. It's a distortion on price. It's therefore a distortion on information, and it leaves Canadians worse off than they were before because they have less money in their pockets at the end of the entire transaction. So then how is it possible that this government, the federal government, can defend its increase in carbon tax on one hand, and on the other hand say it's also benefiting Canadians? Because if it's putting money back into Canadians' pockets, then it's not a tax. It's the opposite. It's a subsidy. But that isn't what a carbon tax is. On the contrary, it takes more money from us at the pump every single liter. Up to 17 cents a liter now is what it's going to be on April 1st. And again, as I mentioned, in 5 years, 6 years, it's going to be 40 cents a liter. They don't want you to drive.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Fear and falsehoods to distract from the fact that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and neither is his carbon tax, which will cost the average Ontario family this coming year $1,674. $1,674 for a middle-class family that's lined up at a food bank, not able to feed themselves or pay their heating bill. Will the Prime Minister give his head a shake, cancel his cruel April Fool's Day joke, and spike the hike?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, no one here is surprised to hear the Conservative leader talk about fear and falsehoods because that is what he traffics in every single day. It's his area of personal expertise. Now, what he is proposing is, at least he is consistent. He wants to cut the support that Canadians get, and he wants to cut the support Canadian families are getting from the price on pollution. That's $1,800 Alberta families won't get. That's $1,120 Ontario families won't get. Cut. All they know how to do.
Again. So Freeland is here saying the tax is actually a rebate. It's amazing. It's miraculous. It's literally miraculous because government is taking money from us, but they're giving us more money back. So it's not a tax. Again, it's a rebate. And if it really is the case that we get more money back from using carbon or using gasoline than if we don't, what's the purpose of the carbon tax? We have heard time and time again from Trudeau that the carbon tax is meant to incentivize individuals away from using carbon. That's what Trudeau said. He said it's meant to incentivize individuals away from gasoline. We don't want them burning gasoline. We want them driving electric vehicles and so on and so on. So the government then imposes a tax that makes the price higher for gasoline. It makes the cost of carbon or the cost of using carbon more expensive in the hopes that eventually we'll stop using it because we won't be able to afford to. But then this demagogue here and Trudeau turn around and say, well, actually, though, you shouldn't be complaining because you're getting more money back from the carbon tax. But then if that's the case, their incentive, or the incentive that we receive, is to use more carbon. If it's true that we're getting more money back from using carbon than if we aren't, why would we stop using carbon? Why would we stop burning gasoline? It's totally ridiculous. Either the carbon tax forces us to pay more in gasoline and other carbon elements and so on, other carbon products, which tries to incentivize us away from using carbon, or we get more money back in a carbon rebate and therefore are incentivized to keep using carbon. Now, the answer, of course, the truth is obviously the former. It is far more expensive for us with the carbon tax to use carbon than our rebate gives. And so Freeland, once again, is proven to be a liar.
Excellent. The honourable leader of the opposition.
So she just brags that Alberta families will get $1,800, but according to the parliamentary budget officer, the carbon tax will cost Alberta families $2,943.
Amazing.
So the Prime Minister takes away $2,943 and gives back $1,800. Mr. Speaker, it's almost like he's a bank robber who thinks that he's virtuous because he tips the teller on the way out the door. Why won't he spike the hike?
That's a good comparison.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader should know a lot about living off the public purse. That's all he has done his entire life. Now, when it comes to the price on pollution, this is entirely revenue neutral. The government does not keep a penny. It returns more money to 8 out of 10 Canadian families. That's a good deal for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Wow, that's a good deal. Well, just ask yourself. All we have to do is ask ourselves, is this carbon tax a good deal? Are we richer because of it? Do we feel, or are our bank accounts better off because of it? The answer is manifest. The answer is clear, which is why Freeland won't listen.
The honourable member for La Prairie.
So the debate here, of course, was structured around the carbon tax. More and more premiers are calling Trudeau to, at the very least, halt the increase in the carbon tax. It should be abolished entirely. We should take that carbon tax, wrap it up, encase it in titanium, and then shoot it off into the sun so it's incinerated, never to return to Canada.